What is going on, Dragon Ball fans? Welcome back to another Dragon Ball Super discussion, where today we're going to be discussing the possibility of whether or not Vegito was capable of destroying Merge Zamasu. Now, you guys have to understand that the retcon in Dragon Ball Super has affected Dragon Ball drastically, especially in the realm of fusion. Now, in Dragon Ball Z, we understood that the Elder Kai told Goku never to use the Potara fusion while transformed because it'll cause defects in your fusion. Fine, we got that. But then we had the Elder Kai explain to Goku how the fusion was going to be permanent, and then we understood that while being absorbed by Majin Buu at the time, of course, they didn't really know why they defused in his body. Obviously enough, once they took the barrier down, all of a sudden they separated. And now in Dragon Ball Super episode 66, we understand that Gowasu had told everyone that the fusion cannot be permanent unless, of course, you are a Kaioshin, or at least from Kaioshin descent. So people are really conflicted on the fact that Vegito may not have had the power to destroy him, but I think the opposite. I think that if Vegito's fusion in this episode was made permanent, I do think that Vegito, undoubtedly, even though Zamasu is immortal, could have dished out some serious damage that could have ultimately killed Zamasu. Now you have to ask yourself, it's like, how in the world was Goku able to use his full powers while Super Saiyan Blue and push back the wrath of Zamasu's blast and essentially damaging him and destroying half of his body, but yet at the same time Vegito wasn't able to do significant damage? Doesn't that trouble anybody? That seems to trouble me, because after watching the episode for about a 6th time, I've noticed that Goku used his quote-unquote full powers after he was pushing back Zamasu's blast, and even after he pushed his blast back, we saw how Zamasu was damaged. So here's what concerned me. If Goku at his full power at Super Saiyan Blue was able to damage Merge Zamasu, how come Vegito, who is undoubtedly, obviously enough, way more powerful than Super Saiyan Blue Goku, having the combined powers of himself and Vegeta, weren't able to scratch Merge Zamasu by using the final Kamehameha? So essentially, Super Saiyan Blue Goku was able to damage Zamasu and Super Saiyan Blue Vegito was not. Unless, of course, the argument can be made that once the ending came about before they defused, we saw how Vegito nearly punched Zamasu's face. He punched him so hard that Zamasu's entire face began to just steam up in purple smoke. We saw how his entire face was just disintegrating before Vegito's very eyes, until that very same punch managed to pretty much use the very last vital source of power within Vegito before he got defused. And right there, that doesn't seem to make sense to me, because how come Goku's Kamehameha wave, granted he was pushing back Merge Zamasu's attack, how come Goku was able to dish out severe and heavy damage to Zamasu via regular Kamehameha, but then when Vegito unleashed his final Kamehameha, which we can all agree is much more powerful than Goku's regular Kamehameha wave, didn't do anything, but instead Merge Zamasu flew up in the air and he said, "This is the power of a true god." It doesn't seem to make sense to me. So the argument can be made that I believe if Vegito did not have a timer, I think essentially enough, because he realized the threat in Zamasu, he would have been ultimately enough the person, the significant person, the hero of the story, as I believe. Towards the very end of the episode, we saw how Vegito was really taking the fight serious, because he told Zamasu, "What's the matter? Can't that body keep up with my speed?" And we saw how fast Vegito was. You can't take that away from him. He was incredibly fast, and so it just struck me as a little odd to see how Goku was able to legitimately tear Zamasu's body in pieces before trying to regenerate in that ugly purple form. And we saw how Vegito's final Kamehameha had little to no effect, as Zamasu quickly just ran up in the air and he was preaching about his godliness. So I do think that at some point, if by some chance Toei had to have scrapped the idea of having Trunks be the victor here, I do think that Vegito should have and could have been the one to destroy Zamasu, and this is my evidence as to why. We saw how Vegito was able to fight against Merge Zamasu, and to a degree, we saw how Merge Zamasu did get the upper hand on Vegito just for the time being, but we saw how Vegito's speed, alongside his power, was able to gradually improve, even right towards the very tippy end when Vegito was going to unleash his godly punch, whatever that was, because when he punched Zamasu, he just caved his entire face in. We saw right then and there that Zamasu was in trouble. Zamasu was in trouble the entire time once he realized that Vegito had the edge here. Once Vegito used that spirit sword, we saw how Vegito kicked it up a notch or two. So Zamasu wasn't able to keep up, but again, it strikes me as a little odd how Vegito wasn't able to sustain any heavy damage to Zamasu, but yet Goku was, but yet Trunks was. And again, Trunks had to use the energy of the Genki Dama, the requirement of the energy from the people, to formulate that in his sword in order to cut Merge Zamasu in half. Now again, I don't really have a problem with that. I do think it's more than fitting to have Trunks be the hero here, but let's take a look at how it doesn't add up. It doesn't add up how Goku did damage and Vegito did not. Now some people can say that Vegito did do damage, but essentially how? You have to ask yourself, what kind of damage did he really sustain here? Aside aside from stabbing Zamasu, Vegito did not, and I repeat, Vegito did not inflict any sort of life-changing damage to Zamasu, because essentially towards the very end, we saw how Zamasu punched and nearly killed both Goku and Vegeta after they defused. So that right there just tells me that I think that they've nerfed Vegito heavily during this, because if Vegito was as strong as we all want to make him out to be, in which case he is, then he would have done much more damage to Zamasu than what we originally thought. But then again, the timer factor, we have the whole timer issue of them having to run out of time, in which I am not a fan of, because now the difference between Gogeta and Vegito, the mystique of Vegito is no longer there. So the difference between Gogeta and Vegito now is essentially the same thing. I mean, they both have a timer, except now, you know, one of them has a blue form and the other one does not. So I do think that, in my opinion, however, if the fusion timer was permanent between Goku and Vegeta, I think Vegito would have easily killed off Zamasu, for the simple fact that even after he stabbed Zamasu, he had told him that while he is fused, the mortal that lies within his body, that being Goku Black, will forever be a part of him. And again, he is a Ningen, he is a mortal, he's not immortal, and that makes Zamasu vulnerable. And I think that Vegito definitely exploited that vulnerability, because even after that, he was trying, I believe, to kill Zamasu, and Zamasu is not a pushover either. A lot of you guys seem to forget that he is not Buhan. We saw how merged Zamasu, he was even able to knock down Vegito several times, but again, Vegito, I do believe, had the powers and the capabilities to stop him. But again, as merged Zamasu is part immortal, he was driven crazy even by Gowasu. Gowasu said that we see how Zamasu was conflicted by his emotions, and all that rage and anger inside of him was beginning to manifest, and that was really bad. But again, going back to the original question, how come Goku at his full power was able to damage Zamasu and Vegito's final Kamehameha did not? That doesn't seem to make any sense to me at all, because essentially enough, if Vegito was as strong as we all want to make him out to be, he would have easily just done something to Zamasu of heavy damage, to where Zamasu was just beginning to lose his mind. Perhaps even it would have been more than fitting to see Vegito rip his other arm off per se, and we see how Zamasu tries to regenerate, but again, he grows another purple arm. It doesn't seem to make any sense to me at all, but I do think that towards the end, because people were talking about the whole permanent factor, and they were saying how even if, or at least some people were saying, even if Vegito managed to stay permanent, he wouldn't have had a chance because of Zamasu's immortality. But I want to say that I beg to differ, because even though Zamasu was immortal, as I said earlier, I think Vegito was beginning to exploit his vulnerability, that being the purple side of Zamasu, because obviously enough, if you pay attention, Zamasu was only struck on his purple side. So that means that Vegito, throughout the entire time, he was striking Zamasu's purple side of his body. Obviously enough, I think we can all agree that his purple side was his vulnerable side, because that was the mortal part of Goku Black that was inside of Zamasu's body. So it only makes sense for Vegito to permanently strike and go after the vulnerable part of Zamasu, instead of going after the green part of him, which again is immortal. But I think that towards the very end, Vegito could have easily destroyed Zamasu over time. I don't think that Vegito, even after unleashing the Kamehameha, realized how powerful he was. And of course, towards the very end, right before they defused, who would have known how strong that punch would have been, because it looked like, you know, some sort of a Kamehameha punch, or like some sort of a godly punch, because we see how his entire energy was being, you know, chucked in his fist. And the minute he touched Zamasu's face and he was driving him further down onto the ground, we saw how Zamasu's face was steaming in smoke. We saw how there was nothing left of him, and then he quickly regenerated and he punched Goku and Vegeta right down to the floor. So again, I think that merged Zamasu is very, very powerful. He is not a pushover. However, it strikes me as a little odd how Goku at his full powers was able to inflict that much more damage to Zamasu than Vegito did. So does that beg the question, is Goku, you know, in some way, shape, or form like the real hero here in terms of like being able to create vulnerability from Zamasu? And then towards the end, obviously enough, we see how Trunks managed to take all the energy from the people, which didn't really make any sense at all, because we didn't really know that he was able to do that, because Trunks had never seen Goku do the Spirit Bomb technique. So how does Trunks know about doing that move is just beyond me. But of course, it happened and it's suitable. And in Dragon Ball Super episode 67, Zamasu is not fully killed off yet, because he's said to be expanding in the sky. But even with that, people were saying, has future Trunks surpassed God Vegito? And my simple answer to that is hell no. I don't think that Trunks has surpassed Vegito at all. People will say, well, how come Trunks was able to do significant damage than Vegito? And that comes in the form of the energy that Goku and Vegeta and the people around Trunks gave to him, because obviously enough, Trunks didn't absorb that energy for himself. He put all of that energy in the form of a sword. Now keep in mind, once again, the sword had significant power. It was the energy of the people that were on the planet. It was the energy of the Kais. It was the soul energy of Goku and Vegeta. And when you have the powers of yourself, Goku, Vegeta, and everyone else around you in the form of a sword, that'll create one very OP'd weapon. And obviously enough, that made Zamasu very vulnerable yet again. And we saw the vulnerability be exposed once he got slashed in two. And again, episode 67 airs this Saturday, so we don't really know for sure as to how this is all going to end. We do see the Omni King coming into the play here. But again, has future Trunks surpassed God Vegito? Not in the least. I mean, Trunks right now is so far beneath Vegito that if these two are to ever to fight, Vegito takes the cake without even breaking a sweat. However, when it comes to Trunks' super spirit sword, whatever it is you want to call that sword, that is a very powerful sword, because even Zamasu himself had said what energy, the energy coming from this sword is overwhelming. It was overwhelming even for Zamasu. So in terms of the question of Trunks being stronger, I do not think so at all. In terms of Goku, however, being able to damage Zamasu, I think that also we have to look at the fact that it was also Zamasu's attacks that was pushed back by Goku that caused him to be damaged as well. It wasn't just the Kamehameha wave, because once the giant sphere went up in the sky, it also blew up in Zamasu's face. So Zamasu got hit by the energy of Goku and himself, and that's tremendous energy. I do think that if Vegito unleashed the same exact thing, the final Kamehameha, against Zamasu's Holy Wrath attack, and he was able to push it back, I do think that the same thing would happen as an end result, but only if Vegito was permanent. I believe he would have the greatest chance of destroying Zamasu, because judging based on his speed, judging based on how, you know, Vegito was continuously growing during the course of that battle, I think that eventually over time, Vegito would have created himself an opportunity to permanently put Zamasu down. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Do you guys think that A, Vegito could have killed off Zamasu if he had more time, and B, my question to you guys is, how come Goku's Kamehameha wave at full power was able to do more damage than the final Kamehameha Vegito dished out to Zamasu? Let me know down below, guys. Again, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to support the channel by subscribing. In case you guys know people that love anime or Dragon Ball, make sure to share this link, guys, and spread the word about the channel. Thank you guys for watching. As always, if you guys love Dragon Ball, make sure to slap a like down below, guys. Thank you all for watching. Tune in for the next video, and I'll be seeing you all later. Take it easy, guys. Peace.